Well, folks, the moment that many of us feared, most of us predicted, is officially here this week. We are effectively in a constitutional crisis because of Donald Trump. In fact, as most people are aware, The Atlantic ran a headline this week that said the constitutional crisis is here. And the reason we have this constitutional crisis less than 100 days into this man's administration, we're not even 3 full months into it, is because Donald Trump made it crystal clear on Monday, and his DOJ made it clear over the weekend, and his advisors made it clear in media appearances, they're going to defy an order from the United States Supreme Court. That order, of course, is to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to that torture prison in El Salvador. Trump says he can't do it. Bukele, president of El Salvador, says, I'm not going to do it. He's openly defying a Supreme Court order. On top of course, all of the other, federal court orders that his administration has also ignored. But this is the constitutional crisis because the Constitution calls for a system of checks and balances. That United States Supreme Court is an autonomous group separate from the executive branch, separate from the legislative branch. It is the top of the judicial branch. What they say is law. They have power over the president. Congress has power over the court. If the court says, nope, you can't do this, Congress can then pass a law that says, wait, he can. And then the court says, oh, okay, I guess he can. But each branch kind of has power over the other because that's the checks and balances so that one branch does not gain too much power. Unfortunately, Trump's decision to defy the Supreme Court's order throws all of that into disarray. It completely disregards the Constitution. And to make matters worse, there's nothing that can be done about it. Almost nothing. There are actually 2 things that can be done, neither of which are fast. But let me read you a couple of quotes from individuals because this constitutional crisis talking point is now really starting to take shape. Sarah Longwell, political strategist, publisher of The Bulwark, said this week, he's threatening media companies who are critical of him. He's talking about sending Americans to foreign prisons. He's signing executive orders to investigate former staff members who spoke out against him. Don't you see what's happening here? Robert Reich, former labor secretary, he's a professor at UC Berkeley. He said, Trump is denying due process to foreign nationals here legally, ripping them from their families and deporting them. Do we really believe this regime will follow any sort of due process for American citizens before he tries to deport them? Call it what it is, fascism. If Trump can claim a national emergency to disappear legal residents without due process, what's to stop him from doing the same to U.S. citizens who oppose him? No one is safe, not even people legally in the country, possibly not even American citizens. Fascism is here. Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, wrote, disappearing people without any due process is fascism, full stop. I'm sick to my stomach, and we all should be. And he's right, we all should be. This is a constitutional crisis. If Trump chooses to defy the United States Supreme Court, how do we hold him accountable? What do we do? Right? Nobody can answer that question honestly and truthfully. Because to be honest, there is nothing in the Constitution for this. We can't do anything. Kind of. There is a group of people that can do something about it. Unfortunately, that group of people is a group of people handpicked by Donald Trump himself. And that remedy, of course, is the 25th Amendment. Donald Trump has proclaimed himself through his actions, not his words, to be the dictator of the United States, a man above the law that can ignore the other branches of government. That is grounds for a 25th Amendment challenge. But the 25th Amendment can only be invoked by those cabinet members and the Vice President of the United States. Once it is invoked, J.D. Vance would then be given powers, and Donald Trump would have to prove that he, of course, is still fit to be the President of the United States. It is then up to Congress to vote on whether or not Donald Trump is fit. If they say no, he's out. If they say yes, he's back in. So, invoking the 25th Amendment isn't going to happen because Donald Trump put the stooges in place to make sure it doesn't happen. So what's the alternative? The alternative is we suffer through this till November 2026 and bring in enough Democrats to impeach the bastard and get him out of office. Now, in the Senate, that's almost impossible. There's not enough seats available to get that 2/3 majority to be able to kick him out of office. But we could get close, and we could convince other Republicans, right? At that point, if the destruction continues, I mean, if we see what we've seen in less than 3 months continue for a year and a half, we'll probably be able to get some Senate Republicans on our side to say, hey, let's get this guy out. Then you still get J.D. Vance, right? He would still be president for 2 more years. It's not like we get rid of him too. I'd love to, but, you deal with reality. That is the only possible way. And unfortunately, if that is the answer, we still have to do this for a year and a half, 2 years basically, before we can get to that point. So that's our only solution. And I will say, as kind of a bright spot, that solution's up to you. That means don't sit out the midterms. Don't be one of those people that are like, well, I mean, Democrats really aren't that different from Republicans. Really? Okay. Nobody buys that talking point anymore, and if you say that, you're a moron. Yeah, Democrats are absolutely not perfect. I'll be the first to admit it. They've got problems, but they ain't anywhere near what Republicans are right now. If you want to stop this, you have to get to the polls in November of 2026. You have to vote for Democrats. Even if you hate them, I don't give a shit at this point. If you want this constitutional crisis to end, that is the only solution. That is the only way we stop it. And until then, we have to endure and hope that we still have a country in a year and a half so that we can vote in those midterms.